Welcome to the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. I am Ben McKee, and I'm joined by former Tennessee baseball pitcher Will Heflin on this Thursday, February 26th edition of the podcast. Should be a pretty fun podcast considering Tennessee takes a step up in competition this weekend as they head out to Texas to play in a tournament at the Texas Rangers ballpark in Arlington, which is right across the street, kind of. From Jerry's World. It's a really cool setup, really nice. The stadium is practically brand new. I believe this is the third or fourth season that they've been in it, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know. It's new and it's really nice. I enjoyed it the last time we were there 2 years ago when it kicked off Tennessee's national championship winning season. So maybe the good juju will still be in the building and propel Tennessee somehow to another national championship. But Tennessee needs to get a lot better between now and the postseason if that is going to happen. So we'll touch on some of those things and preview the weekend. I also just tweeted out that we'll take some listener questions, so we may have a couple to answer on the back end of this before we get out of here. Before we dive into our discussion, Mr. Heflin, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, Ben. I'm excited for the weekend, man.
Yes, I am as well, and I will quickly encourage everybody to keep Wes Rucker and his family in your thoughts and prayers. Wes's funeral was on Wednesday. It was a beautiful tribute to the wonderful person that Wes is. His younger brother Grant spoke, and it was broadcast on WBIR here locally. I'm sure that you can find it online through WBIR if you did miss it, but Grant spoke beautifully about his older brother, who he called Bubba Wes, which hit home for me because my two young boys call each other Bubba as well, especially my youngest Jalen. He is certainly Bubba. So that hit home to me, and it was so well done by Grant. And then Wes's wife Lauren got up and was just as amazing. And man, was I blown away by her strength and courage to get up there and speak in the midst of all this. So two beautiful tributes, and it was really cool to see how many people showed up to share their condolences with the family afterwards as well. The vast majority of the Knoxville media contingency was there, and that's all sorts of media, writers, radio folks, TV folks. It was really cool. And that family's still going through a lot, and I certainly don't want to pretend that I've been feeling the way that they have been, and they'll have a lot more to overcome in terms of those feelings than I will, of course. But at least for me, it was able to give me a little bit of closure, and so it was a very nice day, and we will be thinking about Wes continuously and his family as we move on. And again, please don't stop thinking about and praying for their family, and if you have the means to do so and feel led to do so, please visit the GoFundMe to continue to contribute to the Rucker family, because they are certainly going to need it. That's been overwhelming to see as well, the support that they've seen. The last I saw, I think it was almost near $750,000, which is just amazing, especially because Wes was struggling to get life insurance or did not have it. I'm not sure the exact details on that, but had a stroke previously, which made it harder, and then changed jobs recently. So that family needs every penny. And so if you have the means to do so and feel led to, please consider doing so. Will, when you look at this weekend, hard not to get excited about watching Tennessee face number one UCLA. And I guess we'll start with the oddity that is college baseball. We have this conversation every year, but you look at Tuesday's slate of games, and UCLA lost, Arkansas lost, LSU lost, Georgia lost Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't remember which day that was.
Wednesday.
Oklahoma, what's that?
Wednesday.
That's
Georgia
what I thought.
lost.
Yeah, and Arizona State looked awesome over the weekend, who Tennessee plays on Saturday. Or, excuse me, Arizona State did look good, but Oklahoma looked really good as well to start their season. Arizona State goes to Norman on Tuesday and kicks their teeth in. They did lose the second game on Wednesday, but Arizona State looks really good and is going to be really stout competition on Wednesday. But a gentle reminder that college baseball is odd, and anybody can beat anybody on any given day because of how unique the sport of baseball is.
Yeah, midweek madness is nothing new. So I think it was a little weird. Some of the scores were wild, but the result not necessarily a big surprise. Um, I I don't like that UCLA lost the Tuesday before we play them. That was always like a kind of a running thing with Florida. The last say 5-6 years, they went through a run of like 4 years in a row where they were terrible in midweeks, and they really weren't good in non-conference. But they would lose to FIU or FAU or North Florida or somebody or UCF or Florida State. They lose to one of the Florida schools in the midweek, play horrible, and then turn around and look like a national championship team on the weekend. So it was like Florida losing their midweek was the death sentence to whoever they were playing on the weekend. But this early in the year, I don't know that it necessarily matters. But either way, win, lose, or draw in the midweek, don't look into it too much. The seasons are decided on Thursday through Sunday for sure.
Well, and just also the season, like you just said, is not decided, which is a reminder that while the series loss to Kent State over the weekend was ugly, there's a lot to work on, a lot that needs to be cleaned up. Like those results can happen in the sport of baseball at the college level for sure, and it doesn't necessarily dictate how the entire season is going to go. But there's no doubt again that Tennessee is going to have to clean up a lot of things if it wants to not be embarrassed this weekend. What is number one on the, I'll say, to-do list, but like I want to frame the question in the sense of if you see Tennessee do this thing this weekend, you'll feel much better about them than you did this past weekend. Is it the offense? Is it
it's
some of
definitely
the
something
command stuff
offensively
with
for me.
the bullpen?
No, it's definitely something offensive for me. I think a fast offensive start. If I see, and it doesn't have to be all three, certainly it won't be. If it does, we'll take it. But I want to see at least one game where you get a balanced 1 through 9 contribution where the offense scores, a solid handful of runs and keeps pressure on the defense and just puts together a full day offensively and manufactures when it's there. Maybe you get a big swing or two to hang a crooked number. But I want to see a persistent offensive attack at some point this weekend. That would make me feel phenomenal.
In what sense do you want to see that? What do you feel is lacking from the offense thus far? Because we'll dive into the midweek game here in a moment. It was not a fun first 6 or 7 innings to watch on the offensive side. The pitching rebounded nicely, especially the bullpen in the midweek game against Bellarmine. But the offense just continued to struggle those first 5-6 innings before they broke out in the 7th. Do you feel like their approach needs to be different? Do you feel like there needs to be more grit in the box? Do you think a little more luck needs to be involved? Because some guys continue to just square the baseball up and hit it right at somebody. For me, I think I'd like to see a little more. I don't think that they've lacked effort. I think it's been that they haven't executed, and it's speaking about that low hanging fruit that I talked about on the last podcast. I think it's low hanging fruit when guys aren't executing and it doesn't look pretty to think, oh, they're not playing hard. Oh, they're not playing with effort. This team doesn't have the Drew Gilbert type of fight that it once had. Those are easy things to say when they're not executing. And so I do think most of it has been a lack of execution, but I think I would like to see a little more, some oomph and pizzazz in the box. I want to see more of that Christian Moore grit, Drew Gilbert grit. And I realize I'm talking about two professional baseball players, two big leaguers, but just in terms of the presence and the confidence in the box, I want to see more of that this weekend.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of alluding to stringing at bats together. Because consistently for a couple of innings, or at least they have an inning where they've got 4 or 5 guys in a row that just refuse to give away anything, right? And I will certainly take some better luck on some of these line drives, and I'll take a 14 hopper that finds its way through the 6 hole, or a swinging bunt for a hit. We will take all of those, and we won't apologize for them. But a word that was used by Vol legend Evan Russell that I hadn't thought of kind of pertains to what you were just saying. He said that they looked tense. He said there looks to be a lot of tension in the offense, which will certainly tie you up more than a lack of, fight or anything like that. I think loose at bats are something you see, and then you get the result that you're talking about, where a guy just looks completely like he's fighting. He's got pizzazz in the box, like you said. You've got to be loose and under control to do that, because if you're tense and tight, you're thinking about way too many other things, and you can't just get in there and compete. And so that was interesting to me. And part of that is due to the youth, such a young position group that we have. Reese is the only senior. You don't have a single fifth-year guy, and you've got a ton of true sophomores and third-year guys. So I think we're in agreement there, but just a different way to say it. So maybe some looser at bats would solve both of what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to describe it, is the way that Evan did, saying that they look tense in the box. It's not a lack of effort or not being locked in. It's just trying to do too much, and it started spiraling on them. And you're trying to do too much, and you're starting to feel the pressure of it. You're not playing to the standard against an inferior opponent. It just starts to add up real quickly, and that's where that tension comes into play. So that's a great way to put it by Evan Russell. We need to get him here on the podcast and let you two go back and forth instead of me getting in the way of all these great thoughts that y'all are having. There was that tension, as I alluded to, over the course of those first, what was it, 6 innings or so. They did score a run in the bottom of the second when Hunter High hit a sacrifice fly. Tyler Myatt led off the inning with a double, moved over to third on a ground ball. Do you remember who hit that ground ball by chance? The hitter did their job.
It would have been who was sandwiched.
It was
in
Finley
between
Bates.
Bates.
It was Finley Bates who did his job, hit a ground ball, if I remember correctly, up the middle, kind of shaded towards the right, allowed Tyler to advance to third, and then he scores on a Hunter High sac fly. So that's great baseball right there. Great execution by Finley and Hunter to drive in the run. But that was really the only thing going for Tennessee those first 6 innings, and then it breaks out in the 7th in a big way. Manny Marin, he hits a home run. It followed a leadoff walk in that inning from your guy, Chris Newstrom. And then Hunter High did ground out, but reached on a fielder's choice. And Manny Marin hits a piss missile, as I like to say, into the porches. And Will, that's why on the last podcast we talked about how you can't give up on Manny just yet. He's still somewhat young. He's coming off the hand injury. He's a guy that just needs to gain some confidence. And it's no disrespect to Ariel Antigua or Finley Bates or anybody else. It's just Manny's ceiling at that position is so much higher than everybody else's. And if his ceiling is higher, then that means Tennessee's ceiling is higher if Manny is doing those type of things. So that's why you don't give up on Manny coming off of a bad weekend while he's coming off of a hand injury.
No doubt. Warm weather, further removed from the hand, all of that will help Manny Marin a ton. And that was a really good swing. And kind of a hockey assist there from my guy Newstrom. It was a long at bat. I think it ended up being like 7 or 8 pitches, works the walk on a full count. And I believe Manny had a long at bat as well and then ran into one. But those are the type of at bats that you stack back to back that lead to that result, right? Like the game tends to go that way when you put together really good at bats. I mean, 2 guys seeing upwards of 14, 15 pitches from the pitcher, you're much more likely to get them when you're in there seeing more pitches. So that's kind of a microcosm or a singular example of what we need to do on a much more often, much higher volume basis, which they can and they will. They know how to do it. It'd be interesting to see how the offense looks in the big league park in a controlled weather environment and against better pitching. I think seeing some better arms this weekend as far as velocity wise could help this team. Um, you spend a whole fall facing Coons and Mac and Bo Rudy and just a lot of elite level fastballs. And then it's cold and you're facing guys that maybe don't throw as hard. You kind of get what, gosh, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Who's our reliever from ETSU?
Brady Frederick.
Frederick. Yeah. Sorry, Brady. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I do apologize. You are awesome. literally, what, literally, besides maybe Arvidsson, probably highest on Frederick out of the pen, but I don't know why I was blanking on his name. A guy like that is terrible for this lineup to see in cold weather early in the year. You're used to that. Like, he's the perfect off speed. So you get a hard throwing righty in there this weekend. I think you should see the lineup have a little bit more success driving the baseball and maybe just not trying to overswing as much. You know, sometimes the higher velocity you don't have time to sit there and evaluate what the pitch is. It's much more reactionary. It's reactionary anyways, but the higher the fastball, the less time you have to think, right? And so I think that could help guys like Levi or Reese or even Blaine Brown. Like, sometimes it just the slower off speed just seems to have them trying to wait too long and then overswinging, stuff like that. So I know Brown's been amazing, but I think he could even, wow you even more when he turns around 95 to the second deck.
He doesn't. He seems to be very eager to do damage, and sometimes that can hurt you as a hitter. And speaking of Blaine Brown, he rounded out that inning with a big 3-run blast to right field. Also, another piss missile, which we always love to see on a baseball field. But he is a guy that, like, are there things that he could be better? Absolutely. In terms of this past weekend that he had, it seems like he's trying to do damage on every single pitch is what it feels like. And that can lead to chasing out of the zone or swinging at a pitch that is not your pitch or in your wheelhouse, swinging at a pitcher's pitch. But aside from that, I think the biggest issue for Blaine was he kept hitting it right at guys over the weekend. We talk about some tough luck. I mean, Blaine was the epitome of tough luck over the weekend. So probably a nice little confidence booster for him to have that 3-run shot there in the 7th to help break the game open. But yet again, who starts that rally? Jay Abernathy. Jay Abernathy just really continues to be a tone setter at the top of Tennessee's lineup. We talked about on the last podcast how we loved his all-around game against Kent State defensively, on the bases, at the plate. He continued to impress on Tuesday in the midweek game. The other thing I was going to say about Manny Marin, I think tip of the hat to Josh Elander. Benches him or gives Ariel the start at shortstop, gives Finley Bates the start at second base. In Josh Elander's postgame comments, he kind of said, like, hey, I was trying to challenge him. I'm paraphrasing, but he did not shy away from sharing that he did that, made that move to motivate Manny and push him to see how he would respond. And Manny responded really well. He had another single in a later at bat as well. So for Manny's sake, hopefully that's confidence building leading into this weekend, because Tennessee is certainly going to need him. As we put tie a bow on the offensive performance against Bellarmine, let's wrap up with thoughts on the lineup changes that I just alluded to. You shook it up quite a bit. Josh Elander did. You still had Jay Abernathy leading off, but then Henry Ford bat second, which he had been doing, but moves Blaine Brown down to the 5 spot. Levi Clark hits third, Reese Chapman fourth. Blaine Brown was your DH because he opened. Tyler Myatt in left field, and Tyler played a really nice left field the other night, had several balls hit his way, which, of course, that's how it always works, right? You insert somebody defensively for the first time, and it's like 5-6 fly balls hit at him in the first 3 innings or so. Those are the baseball gods testing him. And Tyler looked good out there in left field. I'll be curious to see what he does in a bigger outfield this weekend in Arlington. But also had a nice sliding catch on the run to his right. Tyler looked really good defensively out and left. And then you had Finley Bates start at second. Hunter High got the start at first and batted eighth. And then Ariel Antigua batted ninth and played shortstop, which Ariel continues to play a really nice shortstop. It's just the bat just leaves a lot to be desired, as we have talked about. What were your thoughts on those lineup changes, and what would you like to see stick going into this weekend?
Yeah, my only thoughts were that it's a midweek, so shake it up a little bit. Blaine Brown will not be in the 5-hole this weekend. If he is, I may be the first one to protest. But Jay needs to stick at leadoff, go forward 2. I would move Brown to 3. And then that would push Levi back to 4. Or you can move Levi down until he stops struggling. But what I think it'll be is Levi 4, and then Reese would be 5, Stone 6, and then Manny, Bates, and I left out Myatt. Myatt's going to be the DH sandwiched in there somewhere in the 4 to 7 range, and then Manny, Bates, and Stone would be your bottom 3.
I think I want to see Tyler Myatt hit cleanup this weekend.
I do too. The only thing there is that would be 3 of the first 4 lefties. But I don't really mind. He seems to stay inside the baseball and hit lefties. So I don't see yourself getting caught in a terrible situation of left on left. But still, for this team to reach its ceiling, Levi Clark has to be a run producer, and Elander is as loyal as they come. So I think he's going to continue to ride with Levi and let him work his way out of it, which I'm fine with. But I would be, if you were just looking at, in UCLA's game 1 starter is a righty. So at least for the first 4 to 6 innings, it would actually help you to have Maya in the cleanup, because then you'd have the matchup advantage there. But then that would put you at 4 straight righties at the tail end of your lineup, depending on where you put Reese. And if you do have Maya in the 4, that probably pushes Reese to the 6. So 7, 8, 9 would be righties. But we'll see what they do. I think those are the 9 I'd go with. I'd go with Bates at second, Manny at short, Henry at third, Myatt or Brown left/DH, and then Jay center, Reese right, Levi first, Stone catching, and then Teagan will be on the mound. So I think that's your best 9 right now to go with for Friday.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I have the same thoughts. The only thing that I would add is that I wouldn't mind seeing Newstrom at second again. He's a guy that maybe like Levi, you kind of leave in there because you know the ceiling, you know the talent, and maybe he's able to work out of it. I think the ceiling is higher with Newstrom than it is Bates, but the floor is higher with Bates than it is Newstrom right now. And Bates has been fine with the bat as well, which is why I would give him the leg up over Ariel. But we harp on Ariel's offense. He has been really good defensively to start the year, and in a big league ballpark against some of the best teams in the country, especially on Friday and Saturday. Like I don't think it's the worst idea to have him at second either. I mean, you are giving up offense there, but I think the defense is really going to be needed this weekend. And it's not like you're keeping a red hot bat on the bench in Finley Bates or Chris Newstrom, and you can always pinch hit for Ariel later on in the game if needed. But I think I might like his defense in there this weekend, to be honest with you. Just the competition, big league ballpark. Not that the infield size is different, but just, I don't know. I guess there's just those vibes of being in a big league ballpark. I don't know. But I wouldn't mind to see Ariel in there at second, but I would certainly roll with Manny at shortstop. As you mentioned, it'll also be interesting to see what they do with Myatt. I assume they'll stick him back out there in left field, and I'd be fine with that. I believe you said that as well, correct?
Yeah, I said if he's in left, Blaine's DHing. If Blaine's in left, Myatt's DHing. Whoever they
Yeah.
want to play in left field. If you think maybe Brown will get an inning on the mound this weekend, then just DH him.
Yep. I am in total agreement. Speaking of the mound, we're going to come back on the other side of this quick timeout and talk about Tennessee's pitching performance against Bellarmine on Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. I am Ben McKee, and I am joined by former Tennessee baseball pitcher Will Heflin. Before we jump back into our conversation, I would like to encourage you, if there's a Tennessee baseball fan in your life that you know hasn't quite found us yet, and they're searching for answers about this baseball team after its series loss to Kent State ahead of a big weekend in Texas, I'm not saying that we have the answers. Evan Russell and Will Heflin do have the answers. I don't have the answers, but I am trying to talk through Tennessee baseball's problems and see if I can find the answers and be as smart as Will Heflin and Evan Russell. I'm just trying to be as great as Heflin and Russell and Redmond Walsh, Jared Dickey, Xander Seacrest. I got a text from Xander Seacrest on Tuesday. He was watching the game, and he's like, oh, man, this offense just seems off right now. I'm like, yeah, it does, Xander. But at least it's early in the year, and they can work through it. So I'm not saying I have the answers, but if you know there's a Tennessee baseball fan out there that has not found our podcast yet, and they are also looking for answers, if you wouldn't mind sending us their way, we would greatly appreciate that. And another big way to help us here on the podcast is if you haven't subscribed to our GoVols 24/7 channel just yet, if you wouldn't mind doing so, that would help us in a major way. And if you would feel inclined to leave a review, that would also be very helpful.
Speaking of Xander Seacrest,
The GOAT.
Unsung hero, by the way, could have given him MVP, and that's saying a lot considering the guy who got it, Dylan Dreiling, and the other guy who didn't get it, Christian Moore. But Xander Seacrest, one of the best postseason runs in the history of college baseball, not just Tennessee. He was phenomenal and doesn't get enough credit for it. The first question on your tweet before we started recording, Ben, was from our homie Becca. She's awesome. Becca said, why is TBD not in the pitching rotation? That guy shoves. And I want to say kudos to you, Becca. That's a great question. And TBD does shove, and she's referring to none other than Xander Seacrest. So in honor of that, we'll refer to Blanco for the rest of this podcast as TBD.
Well, tell the backstory on TBD. It was Xander, but why did we call Xander TBD?
It wasn't a great reason, but it ended up being awesome because of how he finished. He was TBD because he wasn't pitching well, and it was kind of Vitello's little game where everybody knew he was going to throw, but they didn't have a super solidified Sunday guy. He was more of the opener early on, and they just left it open just because, in case they wanted to pivot, right? And when he did start throwing well, at that point, it was, well, you got to leave it as TBD now, because he went on a run of like however many starts in a row where they were quality starts, and he was just pitching really well. And it was after that Georgia game on Sunday where it was a bad day for Tennessee baseball. Or was that Sunday against Georgia? Yeah, they were going for the sweep, and I think they got hammered. Or they may have lost the series. I don't think they did. No, they didn't. But Sunday was a super offensive day. They may have won the game, but Xander didn't throw great. After that, he was dynamite, and I can't remember a bad outing he had since. And his outing against Evansville to go to Omaha was unbelievable, and his outings in Omaha were absolutely phenomenal. So shout out to you, TBD. And Becca, thank you for the question. I don't know why he's not in the rotation.
We're going to have to really get on Josh Elander about not having TBD in the lineup. I think it was Georgia because I was in Charlotte at the NCAA tournament, if I remember correctly. It was something along those lines.
Say that again.
I believe it was Georgia. No, they didn't play Georgia the national championship year.
Oh, they did, for sure.
No, they did. I'm looking at last year's schedule like a dummy.
Yeah. He was TBD for a while because actually the first weekend, he was the guy against Baylor. We didn't know who was going to be the Sunday starter. It was pretty clear that it was going to be AJ Causey on Friday and Drew Beam on Saturday. And then it was kind of like, we don't know. Well, then it ended up being AJ Causey had to get an opener, and that ended up being, who was the lefty from Cal?
Chris
Stamos. He ended up opening on Fridays, and then Causey would piggyback him and do an actual start. And then Xander was TBD on Sunday. You want to talk about piecing the thing together. They had to get real creative with that team, and my gosh, did they pull it off. But that was Tony's best coaching job, and he's done some phenomenal ones. But that was to the way that when you think back on it, now the bullpen was awesome on that team. Very just full of guys that wasn't their best stuff bullpen wise, but you think about Kirby, the year that he had, and Snead was really good that year. And then I'm blanking on everybody's name today, but the righty who closed the deal against A&M,
Aaron
Combs, those guys had some gumption to them. So
yes,
that was a fun group, man. It's always fun to reminisce on them. Old TBD.
They beat Georgia 7-0 in the series finale. So I don't recall which Sunday that started, but I remember
which Xander start I'm thinking of. Then I know the Baylor one wasn't great to start.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what was like, okay, we're not real sure, and they kept running him out there, and it just got a little better each time, but it was TBD. And then it
might have been the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa to start SEC play. They lost 7-6, and the rest of the Sundays, 15-4 over Ole Miss. 7-0 over Georgia, 19-5 over Auburn, 8-4 over LSU, 13-11 against Kentucky. But TBD had already happened at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was one of those games. Hopefully somebody will remind us. And shout out to Becca, very loyal Diamond Vols podcast listener, has been for years, and we greatly appreciate you, Becca. Before we get into some more fan questions, before we get out of here today, there is no TBD this weekend, although we are referring to Evan Blanco as TBD. Tennessee announced its starting rotation before we pressed record here on the podcast. Tegan Coons is going to get number 1 UCLA on Friday. Landon Mack is going to get a red-hot Arizona State on Saturday. And TBD, a.k.a. Evan Blanco, will get Virginia Tech on Sunday morning. Your thoughts on that rotation, and something that just popped into my head. I can look it up while you're talking, but I imagine there will be some familiarity for Evan Blanco pitching against an ACC school. I would imagine that he pitched against them at some point while he was at Virginia. He was banged up last year, so maybe he didn't pitch against them last year, but he would still have some familiarity. I wonder if we'll see that play a role in his performance on Sunday.
Yeah, maybe so. The former in-state rival. He's from Massachusetts, but he went to school in Virginia for 3 years. So I would imagine, like you said, he's pitched against them at least once. But I would also like to see if there's a single guy in the lineup who was there when he pitched against them as well. If he did last year, then probably so. But you know how college baseball is now. So I don't know. Yeah, it may play a small role, but not really.
What are you looking for from Tegan and Landon? Because with some of the offensive concerns that we've discussed, I feel like Tegan and Landon are going to have to, unless the offense breaks out, Tegan and Landon are going to have to be pretty dang close to lights out on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, they just need to do their thing and keep Tennessee in the ball game. I mean, there's no reason to go out there and think you have to throw 7 scoreless or strike everybody out. That's going to make it harder on yourself and probably tougher to get deep into the game because you're going to have more weight on each pitch from the jump. Just treat it like they have been and trust their good stuff. So just get out there and compete. There's no reason to worry about the offense. They can't control that. For all they know, they may go sit down after an inning and sit there while Tennessee scores 8 runs. They just don't know until it happens. So, You just go out there and pitch like it's 0-0 because it is. And then when it's not anymore, then you adjust and pitch to the new situation. Some coaches will tell you, if you got a little league coach telling you, don't worry about the scoreboard. That's a bunch of, what do you call it? Bananas, shenanigans. What's the word I'm trying to, that's a
Bull
bunch of,
jive? I don't know.
yeah, that's a bunch of bull jive. Look, when there's under 2 minutes in a basketball game and you're down 6, do you want to hold the ball to the end of the shot clock? No, you want to shoot so that you can get more possessions in the game. In football, if you're down 2 touchdowns, are you more likely to run the ball or throw the ball? You're more likely to throw. In baseball, if you are up 3 runs and you've got a runner on second with nobody out, are you more likely to bunt in that situation? Or if you are down 4 runs, you always play the scoreboard. Same thing with pitching. If you're up 4, do not walk anybody. If he hits it to the moon, so be it. 1 run, get the ball and get back in there. So always play to the scoreboard, but never give up, and don't adjust your effort level to the scoreboard. That's, I think, the message there. There's your Heflin side tangent for the day. You're always good for 1 there, Mr. Will. But yeah, for them, look, it's your 3rd start of the year. You're not fully mid-season form yet. You may get a couple more pitches. You're probably a little bit closer. Hopefully you feel good. There's going to be a ton of scouts there. The only thing I would say is do not overthrow and don't empty the tank too early. That's my only advice. Other than that, we'll tap on the butt and go get them.
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on Teagan or Landon that we haven't already talked about heading into the matchup, but fair to say that we'll maybe learn a lot about those guys this weekend. Not that their season will be determined off of this one appearance. Like you just said, it's early. They're not in midseason form, but I think it'll be a good barometer of where they are at given the competition. Because,
Yeah.
like, I know the team struggled the second weekend of the season, but like Teagan and Landon's stuff has looked the way it should against Nichols and Kent State, and really, like, I think Teagan would like to clean up some things from his second outing. It's again, like I said on the podcast earlier this week, like, great job of working through it, but it was pretty clear that he didn't have his best stuff. What was it? 3 walks and 3 hit batters, 4 walks and 3 hit batters, something like
Yeah.
that. Like,
Mac
you do
had a
that.
couple walks as well. So both of them would probably like to get that free pass down to 1 or 0.
Yes, because if you're walking 4 and hitting 3, you're not going to last 2 innings against UCLA. You're just not. Now, I know you think UCLA is the bad news Bears, but I promise you that 4 walks and 3 hit batters is not going to play well. So I am curious to see how Teagan responds to that. It was a good outing against Kent State, don't get me wrong, but again, I'm sure he would like to be much sharper, and I expect him to do so, but I am curious to see how that plays out. Evan Blanco did pitch against Virginia Tech last year. Looks like he came out of the bullpen to pitch 2 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 1 run allowed. Looks like it was on a solo home run, 1 strikeout, threw about 40 pitches. So, like you mentioned as well, would be curious to know how many of the same hitters are in the Virginia Tech lineup given the transfer portal era we are in, but maybe something to remember in the back of your head. And if I get to talk to Blanco this weekend, that is something that I will ask him about after his outing. Against Bellarmine, let's run through the pitching performance real quick. Blaine Brown opens, looked good out of the chute against his first 2 batters. And then gave up, what was it, a walk and a single back-to-back with 2 outs, and then responds with another strikeout. So a little adversity, but looked fine. And he seems to be a guy that it is hard for him to get loose and get warm. So I think that's why you're going to continue to see him in that opener role. But I thought that was evident as well. If you were watching the broadcast, you could kind of see him shaking his arm a little bit as if he was not totally warm. It was a very cold afternoon. The wind was awful. He had long sleeves on. The Houston kid probably did not enjoy pitching in those elements. So curious to see if he gets back on the mound this weekend, and if in warmer weather we see him more loose, quite frankly.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would be super loose in the first inning in that environment. But I thought he looked good. I mean, the stuff is really good. I would like to see him get involved in some capacity out of the bullpen on the weekend if you can find a situation where we haven't really had one yet with the lineups they've faced, but there's going to be a middle of the order big lefty or something like that where he'd be a really tough matchup for. And even if you don't want to, if you can find a way to do it without affecting his eligibility to hit with how you've constructed the lineup, then it would be nice to see him, contribute out of the bullpen in some capacity.
What did you see from Cameron Appenzeller pitching the second inning after Blaine Brown gives up a leadoff walk, and they wasn't really even close, went down 3-1 and then gave up the walk, but then he gets a ground ball back to himself. Tennessee nearly turns a double play, gets a fly ball to left field, and then a ground ball, I believe, to third base there. What did you see from Cameron Appenzeller, and what would you like to see from him this weekend? Because as I mentioned on the podcast earlier this week, he's got to be a piece to this pitching staff in order for Tennessee's team success to meet the standard and expectations of the season.
Yeah, I was just glad to see him out there because, after the way you described it, what Elander said, it was kind of odd. I was like, is there something is there a hindrance with the arm or something like that? So it was good to see him out there. I think he definitely needs to be in there this weekend at some point. If there is a little soreness, then not Friday, but Saturday or Sunday, have him ready to roll. And I would think 30 pitches, something like that, or one really good inning, right? It's going to be – sometimes freshmen do really well in environments like this because the whole ignorance is bliss type thing, but sometimes they can get overwhelmed. So I would just like to let him get out there and see how he responds to the stadium and the environment. Ideally with a lead or tied, but however you need to get him in there. He's certainly got to be a piece, like you said.
I tell you who I want to see higher on the bullpen totem pole this weekend, and you said this earlier in the week. That's Mark Hindy, the big lefty that transferred from Duke. He comes in the top of the eighth after Sawyer Deering, who had a really nice outing, but then in his second inning of work, allows a leadoff walk, then allows a single. They go to Mark Hindy with the runners on first and second, no outs, gets a strikeout, ground ball to second, ground ball to shortstop, out of the inning, no damage done, strands the runners. Mark Hindy is somebody I would like to see in more of a high leverage situation this weekend.
Yeah, well, back to Deering real quick. I thought he looked phenomenal in his first inning, and then he sat there forever. That was the big inning where they scored all the runs. I didn't like that they ran him back out there, and then he was a little wild, so I get it that they pulled him, but it was kind of like he had such a phenomenal inning, and they kind of let him spoil it because he sat there forever in the cold. Like if it's 80 degrees, okay, but 30 minutes in the freezing cold through a pitching change and 7 runs it's like that's one of those deals where you just bring in the next guy, but neither here nor there. He looked really good, and you're totally right about Hindy. He needs to be a leverage guy, like plain and simple. Doesn't matter when or where, they'll figure out how to use him. He was in a leverage spot on that Friday against Kent State and did well, but it was just 1 out, right? I think he's got the stuff and certainly the size and durability to be extended. And maybe you move Appenzeller while he's ramping up to a shorter stint type role where you find a matchup you really like. But Hindy is one of your more veteran guys. He's pitched in the ACC for a while. Like he really needs to be involved. And if he can get stretched out, then great. Now, we haven't seen him obviously nearly as much as the coaching staff has. So maybe he's better in shorter stints, but I think if he can give you 6, 7, 8 outs, that would be phenomenal and really bolster the bullpen, because then you're not trying to throttle back Krenzel or Rudy or somebody else trying to think, okay, I may have to throw them again, right?
Right. Mark Hindy also faced I was looking at Mark Hindy's game log from last year. He's another former ACC pitcher who faced Virginia Tech last year. He faced them on back-to-back days. As a matter of fact, he pitched 2 in total. He pitched 3 1/3 scoreless innings in 2 in a combined 2 outings against Virginia Tech and struck out 6. He had a lot of success against Virginia Tech last year in 2 appearances out of the bullpen. So I wonder if we at least see him. If I'm Josh Elander and I'm seeing that, like, wouldn't you think that, okay, Blanco and Hindi, like, they've faced Virginia Tech before and have had success, especially Hindi. Like, again, I'm not familiar with Virginia Tech's lineup. Maybe it's a totally different lineup than it was a year ago, as we mentioned with the new portal era. But surely there's a guy or two in there that Hindi has faced before, and maybe that's a matchup. If it's a tight game in a high leverage situation, if Hindy's faced that guy before, I'm going to Hindi. So something to keep an eye out for this weekend. The other 3 pitchers who threw, Chandler Day closed out the game, and Bellarmine was able to score 3 runs on 4 hits off of him. That was his first college appearance, and Bellarmine was able to take advantage of that. The other 2 that were in between Appenzeller and Deering was Taylor Tracy. Taylor Tracy was very impressive, the two-way player from Texas, from Austin, Texas. 2 scoreless innings of work, 6 batters faced, all 6 retired, 5 flyouts, 1 ground ball. I was very impressed by Tracy. And then Nick Abraham continues to look good. He's somebody I talked about on our previous podcast. I will say that he's pitching to contact, which you love as a pitching coach, but I am curious to see how that translates to a UCLA or an Arizona State, if that would, like, you against Bellarmine and Kent State and Nichols, you can kind of get away with that. And don't get me wrong, I've been very impressed by Nick Abraham. I want to see him elevated on the totem pole as well. But just as a side thought, side tangent, the pitching to contact, gave up 3 hits, able to pitch around it, 4 flyouts in the 8 batters that he faced. Something that I'll be curious to see, but continue to be very impressed by Nick Abraham. What did you see from Tracy and Abraham?
Same as you. I do like the pitching to contact. I don't foresee that being a bad thing, even when you are facing elite lineups. You got to make them put it in play, and you got to let your defense work. So guys like that almost elevate even more against those type of lineups, and sometimes their strikeout numbers go up, which is odd. But he kind of reminds me of like a Garrett Stallings type, and Garrett, has had good stuff, but early in his career, it was not considered premium stuff, but he knew how to pitch and he found the bat in a good way. There are always going to be days where you find the bat in a bad way. But typically with Abraham, you can kind of see early if they're on him or not. But he does look calm on the mound, right? And you need that late in games, or middle of the games, out of the bullpen, whatever situation he's coming into. So for both guys, I thought they looked good, and you're still kind of jockeying for position on the totem pole, like you already brought up. So we'll continue to see him, but they seem comfortable running Abraham out there. I mean, he's pitched a lot, and so that tells you a lot.
Yep, him and Krenzel. It feels like him and Krenzel are the 2 that they trust the most, in addition to Brady Frederick and Bo Rudy. And look, I kind of talk out of both sides of my neck here, but you find yourself in a position where the bases are loaded with no outs, like you did against Kent State over the weekend when Ethan Beato imploded, and you go to Nick Abraham, he can come in and get you a ground ball, which is what you need in that situation. And I believe it was Manny and Ariel were just kind of slow to turn the double play, but he comes in and gets you a ground ball. And well, I guess technically Abraham plunked the first guy he saw, but then got himself a ground ball, and could have prevented further damage. So he is a ground ball pitcher, although I kind of talked about me maybe worrying a little bit about the pitching to contact. That is a good thing. I don't mean to make that out to be a bad thing necessarily. It was just some of the fly balls were like to the warning track, and a little too much pitch to contact there. But we'll see how that translates. And he does seem to be a guy that the coaching staff trusts, because, again, talking out of the other side of my neck, he can come in and get you a ground ball, which is what you want in some of those situations for a bullpen guy. But overall, Will, just tying it into this weekend, it was just good to see the bullpen bounce back as a whole after they struggled over the weekend, and hopefully gain some confidence, because you talk about the offense, and I'm with you. I don't necessarily disagree, but I just, again, I still worry about this bullpen, as I have mentioned. So hopefully Tuesday can be a confidence builder for them as they did bounce back, because they are going to obviously be needed this weekend against some better lineups.
Yeah, I mean it definitely seems like they want to do the Mac Arvidsson combo there on game 2. Um, and so game 1, like we said, if Hindi is stretched out a little bit, I think he's a really nice piggyback off Teagan. But you've got Abraham, and I think Rudy's going to be better. I think it was just a bad weekend for him. I'm not as concerned on the bullpen, so I guess I'll put my stake in the ground there, and we'll see who ends up being right. But I like the pieces they have, and especially when Appenzeller is throwing on the weekends and contributing, and Krenzel is full speed, and we'll see. Maybe
We
I'm
will
putting too
see.
much. Maybe I'm too confident in my guy Brandon Arvidsson, but he's gonna have to carry some weight, but he will.
Yes, he will. I'm curious to see how stretched out he is this weekend. He honestly pitched more last weekend than I thought he would. I thought he'd be like an inning and get out of there, and he
Yeah,
goes, what, 2 1/3?
yeah. I think it was close to 40 pitches. So
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
mhm.
This is a conversation for a much down the road in a couple of weeks, maybe closer to SEC play. If he looks like that, it'd be really hard for me not to throw him in the rotation.
Yeah,
I don't want to get us off track too much, but like I've already had that thought. I've had a couple people text me about it as well. That's like, man, Arvidsson looks good. I don't know. I think I'd like to see him in that Sunday spot. And then like, sorry TBD, but hard not to disagree there when Arvidsson looks the way that he does.
see, you're not moving Blanco. If Arvidsson starts, he'll move for one of the two righties,
Because he's a lefty, or just
because Blanco is your veteran and will be the most consistent guy you have against SEC pitching. You can book that, or
you don't think
against
Arvidsson
SEC
could be
hitting.
that guy?
He can be, and I'm saying if you want Arvidsson to start, you're moving Coons or Mac to the bullpen. Blanco
No,
ain't
I
moving.
don't see that. Well, see, I don't think Mac or Coons are moving. So
I don't see that right now. But those two guys would make more sense on a back end roll than Blanco would.
yes, no, I totally agree with that thought. Absolutely. Mac and Coons' stuff absolutely plays better out of the bullpen, but I just don't see those guys coming out of the rotation unless they just struggle. But we'll see. Again, I don't really want to have that conversation today. I guess my main thought there is just take the only having 3 spots and throw that away. It would just be really fun to watch Brandon Arvidsson as a starter is my main thought there.
I agree.
But there's also a lot to be said about his ability to come in and slam the door on a team as well, like we loved watching Sean Hunley do, Redmond Walsh do, Camden Sewell. There's a lot to be said for that as well, and a lot of value there. But again, that conversation's for much further down the road. And quite frankly, like, he's going to be in the bullpen unless Blanco, Mac, or Kuhn struggles. I mean, that's what it would take, is one of those guys not delivering. But we did see some command issues over the weekend, so we'll continue to monitor that, but not really worth having the conversation right now. All right, let's get out of here. Or before we answer some questions, any thoughts on UCLA, Arizona State? We know your thoughts on UCLA, but anything else you would like to add from your prior comments about UCLA or what you've seen from Arizona State or Virginia Tech? I will say, I don't know the starter's name. Forgive me, but the starter, you said he was a righty that is going to throw against Tennessee tomorrow on Friday, is 93 to 96. And I thought it was interesting listening to Josh Elander speak with John Wilkerson and Vince Ferrara on Sports Talk on 99.1, that said that UCLA certainly has some high velocity guys, but they have more pitchability guys that are 88 to 92, some crafty pitchers, but The starter, 93, 96, and then has the changeup, slider, and curveball to go with it.
Yeah. The thought on UCLA is don't let Rock Chalowski beat you.
Well, he's a bum,
He's been,
according to you. They don't
well,
have anything to worry about.
he ain't gonna hit in Omaha, but he's hitting well right now. But I mean, UCLA, they're very solid, and it was an Omaha team last year. They returned a lot, but I still don't see them as like the number one team in the country. Like LSU is better than them, flat out. LSU is better than them. Arkansas is better than them. UCLA is very good, but we ain't walking in playing like we did against number one Texas 2 years ago. Okay. It's a good solid baseball team, and I may look really stupid, but it's the truth. Okay. So just play well, and Tennessee is just as talented, probably more than UCLA is outside of their projected 1-1 pick. So Teagan, don't let that guy beat you, and you'll be okay. And Arizona State seems like they absolutely raked in their midweek against Oklahoma. So that should be a good test for Mac. And then Virginia Tech has been really solid the last couple of years. Kind of meh so far this year. I think Tennessee certainly needs to win that game. And so if you can win one of the first two, then you're leaving there with at least 2 wins. And so that's kind of the recipe for me is you have to beat Virginia Tech and then win one of the other two. But overall, it's going to be great competition. We're going to learn a lot about the team. It's good to get them away from Lindsey Nelson Stadium. It's good to play in a big league park. You talked about the bad luck. Sometimes the bigger outfield can help you out, finding some holes. The gaps are much bigger. So all those things will play a role. But, my overall thoughts on the competition are it's good, but it's not better than what you're going to see in conference play by any means.
All right, let's run through these fan questions.
My disrespect on UCLA is going to come back to bite me, but that's okay.
Or it might make you look really smart.
Yeah, we'll see.
But Tennessee could play poorly and your thoughts still be correct. So we're really not going to know about UCLA until later in the season, right?
Yeah.
Just like we say about Tennessee, we're not going to know what this Tennessee team is until we get to May. So, all right, let's run through these questions and try to be a little bit more rapid fire with them. We'll start with our friend Brent. Christina Tippin is the @ I believe I pronounced that correctly. Forgive me if I did not. When do you expect us to be full strength? Referring to Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright. Ooh, that's a really good question. Blake Grimmer just does not seem close whatsoever. Maybe he is closer. Yeah. I'll let Will explain a thought that he was texting with me about earlier this week when Josh Elander provided an update and said that Grimmer hasn't taken normal BP yet. Josh Elander worded it that he has not done overhand batting practice, the traditional batting practice, and Will had a good thought there. So, but it doesn't seem like Grimmer's doing a whole lot just based off of the comments Josh has made publicly. So I'm not expecting him back for a couple of weeks. Best case scenario, mid-March maybe. But Garrett Wright is basically as close as can be. Sounds like he's going to be a defensive replacement this weekend if he does play, which is what he was on Tuesday night. Came in to play center field there, I believe in the ninth inning, just the ninth inning. So he is not quite back to hitting. I mean, maybe he could do an at bat here or there, and he's not able to catch just yet in a game, that is. But he was able to put the catcher's gear on for the first time on Monday, according to Josh Elander, and then he gets in as a defensive replacement on Tuesday night. So he's much closer in the field. He's basically available in the field, just not catching just yet, because obviously when your broken hamate bone is healing, probably not best to catch some velocity just yet. So not completely back defensively, but I say all that to say he's basically back as a center fielder, but not quite back as a catcher, and still a little bit of a ways to go before he's hitting again. Maybe we see him this weekend, but I would think only once or twice. He is taking regular BP. But Will, what was your thought on it not being as crazy that, like, you hear, at least for me, I heard well, Grimmer's not taking overhand BP yet. That doesn't sound like he's close. You had a different thought.
Yeah, if he's swinging, he's closer than what it sounds, because that's kind of like the last step. It may be different for a back, but I mean, when I came back from Tommy John, I was in high school and I took like one round of live BP overhand and then was in the lineup. And I realized, that was a different time, and the back can be, can be different, but I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a couple weeks, but I don't think he needs a month of batting practice before he can actually play. Like, the swings in batting practice should be game like. So if you're doing that, logic tells you you're probably pretty close to a game. But I'll read the next one. Kobe Cool, do you think it would be help whatsoever if Elander was in the dugout when we bat, or it simply doesn't change a thing? This is a good question. I personally think it would do him a favor to be in the dugout. It's your first year being a head coach. Let somebody else decide on go or send, and you be in the dugout with all your papers, and you can kind of, just manage a little bit more without having to be out there on an island. But there are a lot of coaches that do it. So it's totally personal preference. If it were me, I would prefer to be in the dugout. Elander prefers to be on third. Do you have a preference there, Ben? Would it help? Maybe, but Tim Corbin, it first comes to mind. He's always coached from third base dugout, or third base coach's box, not in the dugout. And then, Vitello was obviously in the dugout. Van Horn's in the dugout. Sully's in the dugout. But there are plenty of coaches that do it from the third base box.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it, and mostly because he trusts Chuck Geralman so much. I mean, Chuck Geralman is basically Josh Elander in the dugout, and Josh trusts Chuck enough to run things while he's at third base. And my only thought of how it could potentially get complicated is communicating on pinch hitters in the inning. If it's late in the game and you haven't had the ability to kind of plan out what you would do, if Tennessee's down one in the bottom of the seventh and the first two hitters get on base, and Florida makes a pitching change, or this weekend UCLA makes a pitching change, and it's maybe not one that you anticipated, I guess you'd be able in that instance to communicate while the pitcher is warming up. But if they don't go to a new pitcher, then like, how are you communicating to help somebody get ready? I mean, I guess there is part of pinch hitting. It's like, it's right there in the heat of the moment. Like, all right, you're going in to hit. Like, you don't have time to prepare yourself. But typically they like to give those guys as much of a heads up as possible. So that would be my only thought. But it seems like that could be easily handled. And Josh Elander has said in multiple interviews that he and Chuck have a way of communicating to handle those things. So I'm not too worried about it right now. I mean, I think that's more of a, hey, let's revisit that conversation in the offseason after we see how this first season went, kind of like how we see in football. Like Josh Heupel, if he were to come out and say, all right, Joey Halsley is going to call 100% of the plays, that way. Or that's actually a conversation that's been had this offseason, is that there are fans that want to see Josh Heupel. I'm getting my Joshes mixed up. Forgive me. That want to see Josh Heupel completely relinquish the play call duties to the offensive coordinator so he can be more of a CEO and manage the game better throughout the course of a football game. So that's more of an off-season conversation after you've seen that it did not go well. So maybe if we see Tennessee's offense struggle throughout the season and Elander struggle with some game management things throughout the season, like we've seen Heupel do this past year, then I think that's a conversation to be had in the offseason. I right now, I don't think it's the reason that Tennessee's offense is struggling.
Miller time, Buddy Miles, 26. I know it was cold and against so-so competition, but how is it possible to start the season with no juice / unmotivated? Figured they'd want to prove that Tony wasn't the entire program. The no juice, unmotivated thing, I think the more I've thought about it, it certainly wasn't unmotivated, but I was a little bit underwhelmed with the lack of juice or swagger, as other people have used it. The word that Russell used is tension, and I like that. I think I agree with that. The more I've thought about it, and so that's how it's possible to start slow when you have tension and you're overswinging, and when you are overswinging, you're check swinging and unsure, and you're not able to execute because you're trying too hard to prove that Tony wasn't the entire program. And also just adapting to the changes that have gone on and adapting to being around a new group of guys as a team. Take the coaching staff away from it. I'm just talking about the group of players. It just takes some time, and it's kind of been a weird, slow, just uncomfortable start. Just looking at it all around, and I think that's taken a toll on the offense above everything else. And so that's how it's possible. But I don't think I think it's a dangerous game, Ben, to try to prove something, that Tony's gone and we're still this. We're like, Tony was the program. He always said he wasn't, but I mean, he built the thing from the ground up, right? And he had a ton of help along the way, but he was the guy. And so it's got to be different without him, and it's got to be on their own path and on their own terms. We can't compare every little thing to how it was with Tony, and we can't compare, when it goes well to why it went well, some reason because of Tony, right? And so I don't know. I just think, to answer the question, it's possible because there's tension and they're young and it's cold and it's baseball. And I know that may be oversimplifying it, but that's the answer that I have. And I agree that they do want to prove that they can be successful without Tony, but I think it's a dangerous game if you're actively thinking that.
Going off of that, Thomas, aka Vol in Iowa, how much does the cold weather play a role in the slow start to hitting? The issues with command last Saturday. My take is let's see some games happen in baseball weather before we jump to any conclusions about the sky falling in Knoxville.
Yeah, again, that goes back to being young. I think with experience, you get a little better at playing in bad conditions. Um, and I just think some guys are better at it than others. I mean, Manny Marin's from South Florida. He ain't going to enjoy the cold ever. I was somebody who absolutely hated playing in the cold, and there were some guys that it didn't seem to bother at all, and they didn't have to be from up north. But sometimes those northern guys are much better at playing in the cold because they're used to it. But it definitely played a role. Like, it was bad. It was more, I guess, exaggerated than normal. Because usually you'll get mid 40s, right? And they'll move some game times up so they get sunlight. But that was really bad last weekend. The wind with the cold just takes it to a new level. The worst one I ever remember, Ben, do you remember? I think it was either 2018 or 19. It was a doubleheader or a Tuesday, Wednesday midweek. And it was JMU in town. And I think game one, the Vols won 11-1. And then game two, it was like so cold and miserable. And JMU beat us 21-2. And that was like the most miserable I'd ever been during a baseball game. And Florida, that super cold game one, where they were up at our place, beat us like 19-6. That was another one. I do not have a fond memory of cold weather baseball games. So this team seems to agree with that logic.
The problem is, like, did the weather have an impact? Absolutely. The problem is Kent State handled it better than you do. Kent State was playing in the same elements and played a cleaner brand of baseball. Mark Miller wants to know, is it time to panic? LOL. Seriously, are you surprised at the offensive struggles since that is Coach's wheelhouse? Yes, but I don't know. I just and I guess we can tie it into a separate question. And it was a stat that I mentioned on Tuesday's podcast that Mark Etheridge threw out, that Tennessee is last in the SEC in experience amongst its position players. They are 16 out of 16 in position player experience. The Volsack wants to know, how concerned are you with the lack of experience? Went into the year optimistic on potential, but didn't realize how young we are. And I think that thought from Volsack is my answer to Mark Miller's question about are you surprised at the offensive struggles this early? It's not that I fault Josh Elander. It's just that I think it's an example of just because there's a track record doesn't mean it's automatically going to apply to the upcoming season. And I did not take into consideration how young they are on offense and in the field. And I do think that is going to contribute to some early season lulls here early on. So am I surprised that the offense has come out a little sluggish? Absolutely. But I think that stat of how young they are in the field is a sign that there's just going to be some growing pains that we did not account for in our preseason conversations because we just chalked it up to, oh, it's Tennessee baseball. That means that Tennessee baseball is just going to score 10 runs every game and be perfectly fine. And that clearly has not been the case.
I was reading some of the other ones, but we got to screen the handle names before we just shout those out.
No, it's all right. The Volsack is very, very, very creative. We will give the Volsack that. But how concerned are you with lack of experience and surprised by the offensive struggles early on?
Very right now. In May, no, not so much. But it's certainly something they'll have to go through growing pains and continue to get better. But that also means that their best baseball is well ahead of them, which is a good thing. I thought this one was funny. Chase Hill, 75. When is Elander going to lose his cool? Never. I would love to see him get thrown out once and just see what it looks like if he explodes, but I've never seen it. So when we do, then Chase will both know. When he does, we'll both see it for the first time.
There's no doubt that Ross Kivett gets ejected before Josh Elander, right?
Yeah, that's a over under like 2.5 times before Ross before Elander's first.
Wow, that's a big number.
Ross gets ejected 2.5 times before Elander's first time ejected.
I would take the under. I'll say Ross gets ejected twice before Elander gets ejected.
Okay.
What would you say?
What's Elander's ejection count line for this year as a whole? I think it's 0.5.
Yes, it's 0.5. And I think I would take the under.
Yeah.
Would you take the under?
Advice. Yeah, I'd take the under.
Not betting advice ever. Bradley Dover has an interesting question with factoring in once Blake Grimmer returns, is the best lineup likely Grimmer at third, Manny at shortstop, Myatt at second? I mean, obviously Blake Grimmer would be bumping Henry Ford, not out of the lineup. Henry would still be in the lineup, but Henry would probably be going out to the outfield. I mean, obviously if Grimmer's playing third, he'd be a corner outfielder. I don't know. We haven't
seen Grimmer hit this year. And
it's hard to know because of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a big defensive upgrade. Grimmer over Ford at third. I think the more likely scenario is Ford sticks at third and you see Grimmer in left field.
And ceiling wise, like you said, I still think it's Newstrom at second.
But Myatt will be in the lineup. It's just a matter of where.
Yeah, if Myatt can stick there defensively, then you rock with that. It's an interesting question. I just think we're a ways from having that answer until Grimmer's back and until we see how things shake out with this group of sophomores. Like, you just don't know.
No, we don't know. And like I don't know what to tell you because these guys are truly going to settle it on the field. Like we're going to see what they look like in games, and they're going to give us the answer. Your buddy Ned wants to know and also says that he's not worried about the bats. Everybody has a short streak like this where the bats are cold. However, I am concerned about the defense. Is what we're seeing now consistent with what you guys saw in fall and spring practice, or are we just in a funk, too much talent for this? I asked Josh Elander that question on Sunday after the series loss to Kent State, and he believed that this was a one-off. And that was how I phrased the question. Like, do you think that this is a one-off based off of how you all performed in the field throughout the fall and the preseason? And he thought it was. He thought that they caught the ball and played catch pretty well throughout the fall and preseason practice. So going off of Josh Elander's answer, I would say yes. We weren't out there a ton because the weather was awful and they had to go inside. But I did not see them when I was out there, and of course I missed the fall because of most of the fall because of my health stuff. But when I was out there, I did not see them boot the ball like they did during that series to Kent State.
Yeah, in the first week they were super clean, and I think on paper this is still one of the best defensive teams that they've had. So I think if anything was a one-off, it was that aspect of the game. There could be some bullpen questions. There could be some offensive questions, but the defense, just at least on paper, there is talented defense. When left field is your biggest question mark on defense, like you've got a good defense, right? And Stone, before that series, we were literally on here talking about he's the best catcher they've had metric wise, and then he throws it all over the place. And Manny and everybody up the middle who's out there is super talented defensively. So I think that's a one-off for me.
Chillin' Vol, what have you seen in Jay Abernathy's approach at the plate? Anything noticeably different from last year? Seems to be a potential team leader in the clubhouse. I would say that his confidence is just really high right now. And then what can Blaine Brown do to counter the defensive shifts? Seems Kent State always shifted the defense for him. Any thoughts there on what Blaine Brown can do against the shift? I mean, I think as a hitting coach, you're not telling him to change anything because the moment you try to change in that regard is when you really start to get yourself in trouble and get yourself into a funk.
Hit it where they ain't.
Well, that's a lot easier said than done.
Well, there's nothing else you can do. You can say that and hope it happens. You know where they don't put any filters, Ben? In the parking lot. Hit it there. If they're really shifting you hard, if he's got a bunt tool that he can use, I know bunting's lame, but if you can show a drag down third baseline, it doesn't even have to be that good. If third baseman's playing shortstop, just get it in the general area, and it's a free hit, and that'll take it away and at least open up that shortstop area for you to go backside and still find a hit. But pull side, I mean, they're playing all the big lefties that way nowadays. Anybody with power and bat speed, they're just going to shift you, and sometimes it'll rob him, and sometimes he'll get hits because of the shift that he wouldn't have got otherwise. So it giveth and it taketh away.
Rocco Vols wants to know about Ethan Moore. Is he completely buried? I know the middle infield depth is insane. I know he was thought to be a lock to the league, and it was surprising we got him to campus. How is his bat, and any chance we hear or see some this year? I mean, he's got a good bat. I just think he's a bit more of a developmental guy than we anticipated. I think they're still very high on him, and he's got certainly potential. It's just, like you said, there's depth in the middle of the infield, but he's not quite ready to have an instant impact. I just think it's as simple as that, is that he just needs some development and long term.
I think I would have bet a lot that he would at least have an at bat to this point, but
yeah, I just think
maybe needs more development than we thought.
Yes, that's exactly what I would say that is. Well, Conway wants to know how concerned you are about the depth of the lineup. Seems like we really need that group of sophomores to develop to make it a good lineup. I totally agree with that thought, and that has been what I have continued to say, that how good Tennessee's lineup this season will be determined by what that group of sophomores does.
That is correct, sir. Yes, kind of concerned, and yes, you're right about that group specifically.
Sam Smith wants me to tell my Kyle Wright story that he always makes fun of me for, so I'm not going to do that. And he also wants me to compare William Heflin and Kyle Wright as pitchers, but I'm not going to do that either. Will Heflin was a lefty and Kyle Wright was a righty, so we will leave it at that. Janelle wants to know how I'm doing. You've had a lot going on lately. You have a good support system, I'm sure, but still, how are you doing? Prayers up for you, wife, boys, and your mama. I appreciate that. It means a lot. I'm doing really well. Been a tough couple of weeks for sure, but doing good, all things considered. And then Janelle on a baseball note says her favorite player, Levi Clark, is I can't make out what you said, Janelle. I'm sorry. Love my Knicks. Favorite player, Levi Clark, looking good. I don't have a fave yet. So Janelle's still in the search for a favorite. I bet it'll be Blaine Brown or Jay Abernathy eventually at some point. Maybe it ends up being Levi Clark. I don't know. She'll have a couple of options for sure. And then two more and we'll wrap up. Jaylee Allen wants to know, is it crazy to think that Blaine Brown's highest and best use on this team could be on the mound, given the inconsistency of the bullpen so far and him not having a clear defensive role? I understand what you're asking, Jaylee Allen, but as good of a hitter as Blaine Brown is, the answer to that would be no.
No.
Blaine Brown is just too good of a hitter. But to your thought, I do think he's capable of giving more on the mound and helping Tennessee on the mound more than we have seen. And then we'll wrap up with Big Orange Heupel. I believe these are all the questions that we have gotten up until this point in time. So if anybody asks a question that we don't answer, once we have pressed stopped on the recording, we'll try to answer those on the next podcast or two. But Big Orange Heupel has three. What is to be garnered from the Kent State series loss? We'll start with that one. What do you take away? What is garnered from the Kent State series loss?
What does garnered mean, Big Orange Heupel? That's a big word for you. Word of the day is garnered. What is to be taken away from the Kent State series loss? A lot and a little at the same time. It stinks, and we've dissected it longer than I would have cared to. So ultimately, what I'm taking away from it is hopefully they can spin it into a positive, that they learned from it and improved upon it and use it as a wake-up call. Question number 2, Ben, is where does Tennessee have room for improvement?
Everywhere.
They've played 7 games everywhere, or 8
everywhere.
games. Everywhere.
I mean, I hate to be that short and to the point, but I mean,
they could be 8-0 and we'd say that.
Right, but I mean, yes, absolutely. But they struggled in every area during the Kent State series. They struggled defensively. They had a couple of issues on the bases, running the bases. The bullpen struggled. The starting pitching was fine, but also didn't have the best command. The offense struggled. I think I mentioned the bullpen struggled. I mean, they struggled in every facet. So, I mean, truly, where does Tennessee have room for improvement? It's in every department, because the way that they played against Kent State is it'll be an embarrassing conference schedule if they continue to play like that in all of those areas. What is Tennessee doing well? Their starting pitching has been pretty good. Again, I do think there's room for improvement there. Tegan Coons can't hit 3 batters and walk 3 or 4 more, whatever that number was. I mean, his command can be cleaned up. Evan Blanco also cannot walk 4 batters, and I think he also hit 1. So I think the starting pitching is certainly fine right now, but there's even room for them to improve. And I think Henry Ford, the top of that lineup, I think has been pretty good as well, with Henry Ford and Blaine Brown overall. Just in the 8 games going into Texas, I think you like the tip of your pitching staff with your starting rotation, and I think you like the tip of your lineup with what those transfer guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm going to still say defense is playing well. They had the one terrible game. We'll consider that a one-off, and look at the rest of the games as the body at work and say that for the most part, it's pretty talented and pretty clean defensively, which I know is ironic because you can't just act like that game didn't happen. But we can exclude outliers from our analysis. How about that?
How about that? We appreciate everybody who sent in.
Natural surface. Well, I said we'll really find out this week. Natural surface, big outfield. athletic teams, I don't think any of them will run or play the type of small ball that Kent State did, but I know UCLA's got some guys that can run, so that the middle infield and Stone will be tested again this weekend after the film that was put out last weekend. So hopefully they respond to that.
Appreciate everybody who sent in questions, especially on short notice. That was a lot considering the short notice of us recording. So appreciate everybody.
One more, Ben. One more.
Fire away.
It's burning hot. We got to answer it. I apologize.
Okay.
This is from Diamond Vols. So that's why.
Okay.
That's
boy. Our guy.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No, it's a hot dog.
Yeah, it's its own category. No, a hot dog is not a sandwich.
I understand like the thought that, okay, it's bread, but like a hot dog bun to me is different than the bread I use to make a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time I would combine the two is if I'm out of bread or out of a hot dog bun. Then I would put the dog on sandwich bread, but that's only if I'm out of a hot dog bun.
Can you just roll with one slice though, and just
honestly,
or do you go two?
I don't go any. If I'm out of hot dog buns, I'm just eating the hot dog.
I just don't eat hot dogs, so I guess that rules me out of this conversation.
You don't like hot dogs?
No.
Why?
Because they're mystery meat, and I mean they're good. I like them, but I don't actively eat hot dogs.
Okay. Well, we don't have a choice because that's all Sean Barrows will feed us in the Lindsey Nelson Stadium press box.
Well, I'll handle Barrows.
Yeah, thank you. He won't listen to me, which I don't blame him. I wouldn't listen to me either, but he better listen to Will Heflin. But yeah.
Well, when you say it like that, he's certainly not going to get anything other than hot dogs.
Oh, that's okay.
Your hot dogs.
Okay. They're at least better this year. They're at least fresh. We actually have like the hot dog warmer thing in the press box this year. It's very nice. I can't wait.
Moving on up in the world, Ben.
What?
Moving on up in the world.
We are moving on up in the world. Ryan Shumpert is notorious for eating the glizzies. He's a glizzy king.
He needs to eat as many as he can.
He does. So we encourage him to eat a lot of glizzy. So for all of your glizzy answers,
I was a little worried about Shump with the wind last week.
I'm
out of that press box.
I'm always worried about Shump, regardless of the situation. Just day to day, I'm worried about Shump. If it's a day that ends in Y, I'm worried about Ryan Shumpert. But he'll have all your glizzy questions and glizzy answers for future references. But no, a hot dog is not a sandwich. A sandwich is just a totally different thing.
Does water have a taste?
No, I don't think it does. I mean, we know what water tastes like, but in terms of this world that we now live in, of which everything has a taste and artificial tastes and flavors, viewing it through that lens, no, water does not have a taste.
Yeah, that was a fun one for me and my buddy in high school. That one just came to my mind. We argued that one a lot.
What's your answer?
I was no, because my thing is that what makes Aquafina, Dasani, Deer Park taste different from each other is the minerals and other things, not the pure compound of H2O. H2O has no taste. If you taste something, it's because there is a separate entity in the water. There is something else that you are tasting. It is not H2O. H2O has no taste.
I agree.
But different waters taste different. That I can admit. But it's because of other things in the water, not the H2O compound itself. My mom's a chemistry teacher, by the way. So I hated chemistry, but I would know that H2O is water.
You would know. All right, I've got to get to the airport.
So H2O. Have a safe flight, my brother.
I will. I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody who sent in questions. I will be in Arlington this weekend for live coverage of Tennessee baseball versus UCLA, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech. So make sure you're locked in for coverage there. Patrick Brown will hold down the basketball coverage for me on Saturday when Tennessee hosts Alabama. So for all things Tennessee athletics, make sure you're locked in to GoVols247.com.
Last thing for me, Ben, I did want to give a shout out to our main man, the big Vol sack.
Why? Because you wanted to say Volsack again?
You said it 4 times. I just wanted to say it.
I did say it a bunch.
It just rolled out at first, and you didn't even notice. I was like, "Oh, hello."
Oh, I noticed. I was more mature. I was more mature.
I know that guy, by the way. I know who it is.
Is this somebody who sends my tweets to you and says that Ben's being a little bit prickly?
Nope, he does not. But he's a good dude. I know him.
Good.
Actually, this is a different guy. Wait, is it at Sports Info King? Is that who it is?
I don't know. I don't have it pulled up anymore. All right, I've got to go to the airport. Will, thank you for your time, my friend.
You as well, as always. Fun one.
Fun one indeed. For Will Heflin, I'm Ben McKee. This has been another edition of the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com.